I'm Hannah Thibodeau, and this is the Arctic Edge. It was April 1st, 1999.
Good evening. Well, Canada changed overnight.
A new chapter in Canada's story.
The territory of Nunavut was born at midnight, and since then there's been celebrating and...
The birth of Nunavut wasn't just a change on the map. It was the result of decades of hard-fought negotiation between Inuit leaders and the federal government in Ottawa.
My name is Levinia Brown. I am from Rankin Inlet.
Levinia is an elder in the Rankin Inlet community. She recalls the challenges of the formal negotiations that began during Pierre Trudeau's government in the 1970s.
We had very, very strong leaders in the 70s. Strong, stubborn.
It was strong and stubborn leadership from the Inuit that made the dream real. A vision that would ultimately lead to an historic agreement that created Nunavut, splitting apart from the Northwest Territories.
Over there in the west, they had major population. Over here in the east, which is us, we have very little population. We won the vote. We got Nunavut.
Yes, very little population. Its 36,000 citizens are spread over a landmass the size of Mexico. It's one of the lowest population-dense regions in the world. And it wasn't simply a matter of redrawing borders on a map. This was about the Inuit reclaiming their future on their land and on their terms.
Unilingual elders were involved in steering the negotiations for the Inuit. And they turned out to be very sophisticated in their understanding of the bargain that was possible.
Dennis Patterson was the premier of the Northwest Territories at the height of the negotiations.
And the bargain was to find a way of self-reliance for their children and grandchildren. So they realized that in addition to the renewable resources, the caribou and Arctic char and marine mammals that are in abundance in Nunavut, they realized that their lands also contained riches beneath the ground.
Inuit leaders drew on traditional knowledge and ancestral wisdom to craft their strategy. They knew the land, its value, its power, and chose carefully.
And so these, some might say, unsophisticated and not formally educated folks used their resources to negotiate the land claim, to hire the very best geologists that could be found in the country at the time, to give them advice on this important opportunity of selecting land. And guess what? They selected all the lands that Aglukkaq Eagle's mines are on now.
They claimed the most promising lands available, rich in minerals and resources, and investment in generations to come.
They selected the lands of every existing mine in Nunavut and chose those lands because that's how you get the maximum benefit as landowners from royalties.
Today, the territory makes up 20% of Canada's landmass. Nunavut is 3.5 times the size of France. Under the Nunavut Land Claims Agreement, the Inuit own 20% of it.
They're the largest private landholders in the world. The elders had that vision of creating new opportunities in the modern age, in the wage economy, in ways that are compatible with the traditional economy.
Leona Aglukkaq, first Inuk to serve in Canada's federal cabinet, says Nunavut's creation wasn't just unique, it was transformative.
Nunavut is unique in that it is a region of Canada that has 85% of the population of Indigenous people. It's unique in that it is a region that is huge in landmass and the only region in Canada that covers 3 time zones. It operates in 4 official languages, a reflection of the population of the people that live there, in that Inuktitut, English, and French are the official languages of Nunavut, again, unique in Canada.
She was a young woman when the map changed with a stroke of a pen, and the dream became real.
It changed in 1999, and I was there April 1st and was part of a team responsible for creating the organizations that would oversee the creation of the public government. And to watch the excitement of the people unfold was, you don't experience that every day.
I'm overwhelmed with pride.
Paul Aglukkaq became Nunavut's first premier.
Today we recognize and celebrate our arrival at this destination. We, the people of Nunavut, have regained control of our destiny and will now once again determine our own path.
And this was something rare in Canadian history.
Today, the people of Nunavut formally joined Canada. This was achieved through peaceful negotiations, without civil disobedience, without litigation.
A peaceful, powerful assertion of Indigenous self-determination.
It was an amazing thrill to actually see new maps that came out showing this huge new territory extending right up to the North Pole, occupied for millennia by Inuit who created sovereignty over those lands for Canada and are loyal Canadians, first Canadians and Canadians first.
Dennis Patterson says it is remarkable on another level. The conversation began as a land claim negotiation. But this wasn't simply a cash for land deal. The Inuit insisted on benefits beyond land ownership.
The land claims negotiators told the Inuit, this is a land of money deal. You're going to give up your Aboriginal title to land in exchange for cash compensation and some not insignificant powers to regulate developments on your land through the co-management regulatory boards. But the Inuit said, well, it's fine to have land and money and the ability to control developments on our lands, but what about housing, education, health, justice, these things we care about that governments do? We want our own territory. We want our own territorial government alongside this land claim agreement that is basically about land and resources and cash compensation. And the federal government said, the federal negotiators said, no, it's not part of our land claims policy. Self-government, and this is back in the 70s and 80s, self-government that's another table. You can't negotiate self-government or government powers at the land claims table. We won't allow you to talk about creating a territory. And the Inuit said, without the possibility of creating a new government run by Inuit in our homeland, we're not sure we can sell the deal to our beneficiaries, who had to vote to ratify the deal by a 2/3 majority of members. It was a very steep benchmark they had to follow. So they held out.
The Inuit leaders managed to convince federal negotiators they didn't just want land. They wanted a secure future and needed a new territory. And it worked.
The first success was they persuaded the federal negotiators to say, well, instead of calling the territorial government the Northwest Territories, for the sake of your pressure on this, we'll call it Nunavut in the agreement.
It's important to know the Inuktitut word Nunavut translates into our land. And using that in the negotiations actually played an important role in the creation of the new territory.
And so they started talking about Nunavut, our land, as the name of the new territory in the negotiations. But it was only at the very final hour when, and I was at some of these meetings in the wee hours of the morning, when Indian and Northern Affairs Minister Tom Siddon called Prime Minister Mulroney at home in the middle of the night to say, look, I think I can put this over the hill. We can finalize this spectacular deal, provided you will commit to creating the new territory alongside the land claim, with the same boundaries as the land claim.
On May 25th, 1993, as one of his final acts in office, former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney signed the Nunavut Agreement after years of negotiation.
I've always thought that what the North wants is not a check from Ottawa. The North wants self-reliance, dignity, and prosperity brought about by economic development here in Northern Canada.
And so that's an example of the hard bargain that was driven. It wasn't enough to have a treaty, probably like a modern treaty, not unlike the treaties that First Nations have in the South, with cash compensation and land entitlement in return for giving up Aboriginal title. They also wanted to have a government that would support Inuit and be contiguous with the land claim in an Inuit homeland. So it was a very hard bargain that was driven, and it took 20 years.
I'm still very proud of them that they did that, created a Nunavut.
Levinia still marvels at that hard bargain, at what was achieved, at the strength, the vision, the unshakable belief in what was possible.
How did they convince federal government to negotiate such a land claims agreement? How? We have the biggest country, Nunavut. It's very big, and these young leaders were very brilliant. They were smart.
That new world became official on January 18th, 2024.
Nunavut have always had a long vision of bringing decision-making back home.
In a powerful ceremony held in Iqaluit, Nunavut Premier PJ Aglukkaq and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sat side by side and signed what would become known as the Devolution Agreement.
We didn't, and we're ready.
Today marks the finalization of an agreement that will see the largest land transfer in the history of Canada.
A shift in control, a shift in power, a shift in history.
2 million square kilometres of land and waters will be transferred from the Government of Canada to the Government of Nunavut, to Nunavut.
A moment nearly 25 years in the making. Since Nunavut was officially born in 1999, the dream of true self-government, of Inuit making decisions for Inuit, has been alive. Now it's real. The final say over mining, oil, gas, and development, it will belong to the Nunavut.
It's so important that we bring that decision-making, but also for us to start building our own economies as we see fit.
I spoke with Premier Aglukkaq about the importance of devolution going forward.
Previously, we'd see potentially a mine come through. All the benefits would be flowing straight through to Ottawa, but we'd be left with all the liabilities. So it really gave a different perspective in terms of how Nunavut saw resource development. So I really feel that with the devolution agreement now signed, just that there's an incredible opportunity for the territory to build out our economy as we see fit. Will it be difficult? Absolutely, along the way, just like any jurisdiction in this country, as they joined Confederation, as they joined Canada, they all went through these phases of learning from the experiences, and there's no doubt we'll go through that as well. But as one, I'm very confident we'll overcome, and that we will always chart the best path forward as really the best stewards of our environment, of our wildlife, of our own destiny. So it's one we will always find that balance, and I have confidence in Nunavut making that decision of finding that balance between those two.
While the agreement is signed, the journey and transition isn't over. Full devolution is expected to be implemented by April 2027. It will mark more than just a bureaucratic handover. It'll be a final step in a journey that began long before 1999. A journey rooted in Inuit leadership, guided by generations who knew that those who live on the land should shape its future. A government by Nunavummiut, decisions for Nunavummiut, made on their land, in their language, by their leaders. Not a transfer of power, but a return of it. In the next episode, we'll meet the next generation of Nunavummiut, who will carry the burden of those opportunities, guided by the wisdom of their elders.
I think it's our duty as Inuit to pass this knowledge on.
They're shaping a stronger nation, rooted in traditional knowledge and deep connection to the land.
The only reason that we're here is because our traditions and our culture and our ways of life have brought us here.
I'm Hannah Thibodeau. Thank you for listening to The Arctic Edge.